If you make yourself the hero, you are keeping it to yourself. You are a taker, and you're bringing everyone into you. If you can flip the switch, if you can actually flip that approach and that attitude, and actually recognize that the people who are paying they're the people who have actually paid for your time, energy, and effort. They're the ones who are sitting there waiting for something. What is it you're going to give them? So they become the hero in your life.
I had a great time reconnecting with today's guest. I'm Jason Heath. This is Contrabass Conversations, and we are chatting today with Stephen P. Brown, who was on the podcast, I want to say December 2019 or thereabouts. He not only is a conductor and a fellow podcaster, but he's I'll just call it career development coach. And he's got a lot of interesting perspectives on what performers can do to build a career performing. I think this is an interesting topic anytime, but especially in a moment where we're all shut up inside our homes and all gigs are temporarily canceled. So we dig into what developing your career looks like, resources, what holds musicians back, and so many more things. I got links to his Facebook, his Twitter, his podcast, so definitely check that out. And without further ado, let's jump into our conversation with Stephen P. Brown. That's a great setup you've got there. I like it. Very cool background. Yeah.
Oh,
for
yeah.
Sure.
Well, and that's not my library. That's just the stuff I refer to, and I just need to go and grab. I can't be bothered to walk over the other side of the house. So
nice. Wow. Yeah. So how have you been? I was looking back in my notes, and I got to apologize because you sent me information about something at the end of March that I just didn't get back to you on. So you were having I hope that went well. Did the summit go as planned?
Sure.
And everything? Okay.
That was back in March. I have no idea.
Yeah, it seems like 5 years ago at this point. So
it's unbelievable. I'm just losing all sense. I've posted a couple of times. It's become with my followers. In order to tell what day it is, I have to look at my pillbox.
Okay.
I just hope that I've actually remembered to take that day's pills, So it's oh my goodness, whatever. So what was March? Okay, so that was a summit. Okay, that didn't actually happen. I only got like 3 people who responded to that. Okay. And it was at a time when people were just trying to jump online with everything that they did, and I got overwhelmed. And I know people generally got overwhelmed. So I just thought, you know what? I'm not going to be yet another one doing the same thing. So we took that one down.
Well, it's been interesting following along with some friends and colleagues of mine that have been doing a lot of things online for a while and seeing how they've been flooded with questions,
yes,
and that kind of thing, and then also just are adapting and trying new things. And a woman that I just think the world of, Elisa Jansen Jones. She runs this International Music Education Summit and does a variety of other things, and we brought her on board to organize this bass summit. But oh my goodness, has her life changed in 3 months? I mean, she was active already, but she's running events for Con Selmer and all these major organizations, and
nice.
Totally organic, word of mouth, not trying to advertise. And so it's been interesting talking to different people that have been kind of spending more time online than everybody else. Yeah. And it's also interesting watching all these performers that have never done anything online popping on and trying to figure it out.
Right. And it's fascinating because I help people do the performance thing, do the live performing thing and earn money that way. And now that we're not allowed to do that, shifting so much online, people are like, "Oh, Stephen, you're useless now. You're no longer relevant," all that kind of stuff. And I was like, well, number one, performing is always going to be relevant, regardless. Just because you can't do it right now doesn't mean diddly squat. But number two, I've lived half my life online. You live half of your life online. There are ways to do it. It's just, what is your purpose? What's your focus? What's your, where are you putting your attention? And yeah, everyone's just trying to do these virtual ensembles and these recitals and stuff. And number one, giving them away for free, which, is just diabolical, but that's just life. But people like you with your podcast, I've had my podcasts and my videos and stuff. We've been online the whole time. It's nothing new to us. And some people have just ramped it up big time. Other people have taken a step back. I've taken a step back on things, because, performing that in-person thing is my thing. There are some people out there, some classical music coaches who are showing people how to earn a living on Spotify and make recordings and videos, all this kind of stuff. Great, wonderful, terrific. That's their specialty. Don't come to me asking for that kind of advice. I'm going to send you straight to them, because that's not my thing. My heart is not in it. Yes, I've done it plenty, and I've never found it to be as lucrative as these people make it out to be. I don't know what their secrets are. I've even taken some of their courses.
The Spotify thing, anything like that. I mean, it's good to see those platforms evolving to be a bit more remunerative, but still, you're not making. I don't know anybody who's paying rent who's not Beyonce on not that she has to worry about that on those platforms. So yeah, I'm not sure how that works either.
No, and somebody figured out Taylor Swift is earning 0.000. Hang on, 1, 2, 3, 4, 0.0001 cent every time something is played online. And I don't know what the number. Maybe they were making it up. I don't know.
Okay,
but I mean, that's a lot of plays that you've got to get in order to get $10 in your pocket.
Yeah, it's true.
It's crazy. So how have you been?
I've been fine. It's funny because we were my travel season wrapped up in early March, fortuitously, and I was planning on taking the last couple of months, and we moved. We got a new place, and so I was planning on setting up the place and doing all that. So if I didn't watch the news or look out on the streets and see what's happening, my life's not way different from what I was planning on doing anyway. I was kind of planning on like nesting and working on some video stuff and that kind of thing. So I'm fine. I'm getting a little, I would like a little more variety in my life. but the nice thing is we got a bit of outdoor space in this we bought a place not too far from our old place, and we have this beautiful outdoor space, big for San Francisco, tiny by any other standard, but we'll take it. And I would have been climbing the walls 8 weeks ago in the old place. So it's been nice to get a little bit of, I was out with the palm trees just before we hopped on here and watering the veggies and all that kind of good stuff. And nice. I know you can relate.
Absolutely. This morning I was about for 2.5 hours or so. I was out doing stuff on computer, and there's a park nearby with a lovely lake in it, some footpaths, all that kind of stuff. And they have those picnic shelters where you can have parties and stuff. Of course, there's no gathering, so they're all empty. So I have to just go and sit there and watch the world go by and do my work. And then I had to come home and talk with you.
Here we are. Oh, that's nice. So that's a good way to do it. What is your daily or weekly schedule look like these days? Does it look too different from like 3-4 months ago?
I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, Jason. I struggled throughout March and April. My life was very structured. I'm all about being very structured. There's a lot of people out there who say that life is very fluid and you need to be flexible with it. I'm of the opposite opinion. You have sails that flap in the wind that take you places, but you've got to put that sail on a structure that can survive the current and the wind and all that kind of stuff. So I like my life to be pretty structured. I have great morning routines, workday startup routines, workday shutdown routines, evening routines, just anything from half an hour to 2 hours of stuff that I would go through. Getting up, drink a glass of cold, fresh water, and write in my journal, and then meditate for a bit, and all that kind of stuff. So I like the structure because then the flexibility, the creativity can occur in between times. March and April, when all of my events were cancelled at that time for 2 months, and they've just been cancelled for another 2 months. Meetings, everything just lost, gone. Shopping. Going out for dinner, which my wife and I do a lot, it just all disappeared. And therefore, there was like no motivation to maintain my routine. So I really floundered. I really got lost for a bit. I still did quite a bit of work, but here and there, and it wasn't structured. Was it my best stuff? Was I at my best? Probably not, So I'm getting back into the routines. They have shifted slightly, changed a little bit, but at least I'm getting back into some semblance of of routine because I miss it. I miss that structure.
Yeah, I miss it too. And like you, my wife and I love to go out and explore. And we were so excited, to finally put down roots in our neighborhood here in San Francisco, which we love the neighborhood. And we like our place too. So we've been spending a lot more time at the place, a lot less time in the neighborhood, obviously. But yeah, it's the routines and structures. I've been trying to keep, I try to keep to a pretty strict schedule, and it has definitely been harder, but I start working around 7, 8 a.m. and I'm done at 5 regardless. I shut it down, and shifting projects and trying to not watch the news too much and trying to make the best of it and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it's challenging. I love getting outside, and that's gotten progressively less pleasant. Although I've sort of made my peace with it now. What does your, I've been able to kind of get my morning routine going again and kind of have a good, productive week of work these days. So what does your morning routine these days look like? Have you sort of here in May gotten into something more consistent?
The dream is to get back to the morning routine that I had because it worked so well for me. Right now I'm not there, and I'm going to use that term again, fluid. Mm-hmm. Only through lack of, I don't want to say motivation, but there's something missing in my life in the in-person world. And I've got a big birthday coming up next week, and this is not how I envisioned I would celebrate
sure.
a big major milestone in my life. Not being able to celebrate it with people, so it's like, what's the point in putting all this stuff together? And doing your routines and stuff. So I'm not quite where I want it to be yet. The exercise routine is not there. We joked, my wife and I, and put memes out of pictures. There's one that I really love. It's a very beautiful lady bending over looking into the fridge. And it said day 1 of quarantine. And on the other side, it was a really, really large lady in the same outfit, but stretched like goodness knows what, in the same pose, staring into the fridge, and says day 30. Well, we're on day, 50 something?
Yep.
I can identify with that image now.
Oh, I can identify with that too. I had, because we've been locked down, I think even a bit longer here in San Francisco. I had this is my second full week of just getting back into doing exercise. Like I went about 2 months though without. I was trying. I was going out for a walk, and then it just got less and less pleasant, and then they required face masks everywhere, and that got even less pleasant, and then finally, I was a week and a half ago. I said, "Okay, I'm done with feeling sorry for myself, and I'm gonna just do something." So Monday through Friday, I've been going out for a run, and it's been good for my physical health, but also just my mental health to kind of take charge. Because typically, I have a nice bit of exercise. I usually go to the gym here in our place, which is now non-existent for the foreseeable future, and so things getting upended it's definitely challenging, especially when you have a routine that really works for you.
Right, and I've managed to get the cycling back into its twice weekly, semi-weekly routine. So on my 2 days off of the week, Thursdays and Saturdays, that's when I go riding in the mornings for a few hours. It took about 4 to 6 weeks for that to come back, and I really felt it. And I've been going back to a place where last September I did my first triathlon, and thinking, oh my goodness, how on earth did I actually physically get through this, for crying out loud? I can't even do half the course now on my bike. So it is kind of crazy, and it's because the beaches never closed. Well, the beaches closed in Florida, but the parks didn't. Mm-hmm. So the parks have been getting busier and busier as more and more people feel comfortable getting out. And we've not had the influx of people from the north coming down. A lot of them left in March. They leave in March anyway, but a lot left earlier than they normally do. And anyone coming into Florida has been quarantined for 2 weeks. So, which doesn't make sense because quarantine is 40 days, right? Isn't that where the term? Yeah. So anyway, but they was shut down, put away for 2 weeks before when they arrived here. So the parks have been relatively empty, beautiful places to go, do some walking. I've managed to get my cycling back in, and now I've got to get into that daily routine of physical exercise that I used to have that enabled me to do a triathlon in the first place. I've actually got a sticker on my car that says triathlete. I'm thinking, I need to take that off. Anyone who sees me coming out of the car is going to think, well, it can't be him.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, well, like you, I thrive on the in-person activities and events and all that, and my travel season had slowed down, but that didn't mean that I wouldn't be going out and seeing concerts and dinner and nightlife. And I had a couple other trips planned, which along with everybody listening. So it's not like that. My experience is unique, but I definitely get so much of my creative energy and inspiration from being out there. And I like working from home. I'm used to it, but I guess I like the option to take in more. And I'm feeling a little bit kept in,
and it's fascinating. I think a lot of people are learning a lot about themselves right now. Because I'm a conductor. That's what I've done since I was 16 years old. And you can put me in front of a small group, a large group, a big audience, small audience, whatever. And I'm fine. I can talk to them like, the most common expression is that even the whole of 3,000 people, they feel like I'm talking to that one particular person at any one time. And after a concert, I'll hear 15 people tell me that on the way out. So that's no problem. And the small, intimate environment, the dinner parties, all that kind of stuff, which I love to host. I hate being a participant or a guest at, because I just really, really struggle with that smaller crowd, that exposed environment where it's a little more intimate, little more vulnerability. So some people would call me an introvert. And yet, being an introvert, I've been stunned over this isolation period, how much I actually need people in my life. Mm-hmm. And missing all the rehearsals and the performances and the interaction with people. I mean, you know me, I'm a big proponent for that live music environment because of the energy, the vibrations, the venue or the acoustics, all that kind of stuff, without the amplification that interferes with that. Well, I guess it's the same thing, even without the instruments and even without the language of emotions. Just even being in the presence of somebody else has an energy we cannot replicate online.
Yeah, and it's funny. Like I love technology and all the things that it provides, but that energy, it's just. I appreciate it, and I know it's great, and people are trying to do something, and so I see these youth orchestras trying to put concerts together with little windows of videos, or orchestras and different people from Philadelphia Orchestra to San Francisco Symphony, here, you name it. But I'll tell you, it makes me sad every time I watch one of those. Yeah. It's a little interesting to see inside people's places, but I'm like, oh boy, is this just not what this art form is?
And I've had so many requests to do that, put together a virtual band or a virtual orchestra or something. And let's do that. And I'm like, number one, there's already a ton of stuff out there that's doing that. Number two, most of it's pretty darn bad. Number three, it's not about the music. It's the tech. It's all about the tech. And as you say, I love tech. Couldn't exist without technology these days and what the world's done with the internet and computers and whatever else. I love it. I really do. But it's not music, and it cannot replicate music. And I think that's one reason why I'm not sure if I mentioned to you that there's a resource that I put out. I just recently did a speech a few months back, and I decided just to release the worksheet. It's called Stepping Up, and it includes being resourceful, because you can dream your dreams, and we all should dream our dreams. That gives us our goals and what we want to do in life. And then you need to take intelligent action. You actually need to do something about it. But as soon as there's a resistance, as soon as we get knocked off course or anything happens, a lot of people tend to give up. And you hear a lot of people say, persevere, keep going, just keep pushing through, all that kind of stuff. That's a little incomplete, because if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, all the insanity cliches, all that kind of stuff, what I think the third thing is resourcefulness. You need to be resourceful. Smart, quick, clever, creative ways. And quick is the thing that people miss about resourcefulness. Be quick about it. Yes, be creative. Yes, be clever, but you got to be quick. So in this like lecture that I gave, and this resource that's out there, I hope you don't mind me plugging it. University. Okay, concertuniversity.com/stepping up. Okay, cool. And it's just there. And it says in there that you need to go beyond being a hero, being a hero in your own life, in your own career, is just not enough. That's so 20th century and backwards and self-centered and focused. People don't want that anymore. I don't know if you're familiar with Donald Miller. He writes about story brand and how stories originate. Every single movie and story that you see has 7 elements to it. Every single one. Doesn't matter how long or how short. Even Hemingway's, well, the shortest story attributed to Hemingway, For Sale, Baby Shoes, Never Worn. Scary story. But even that has all of these 7 elements in it. And it starts off with your hero, who then faces a problem, who meets a guide, who gives them a solution, who then the hero then takes action, and then you either win or lose. So those are the 7 elements. And what I have learned is that people don't really want. We've moved beyond now admiring the hero. We no longer look up to that celebrity as the be all and end all because of all the tabloids and whatever else. We see that they're just as faulty as anyone else. So we don't admire them as much. What we're looking for is the sage. What we're looking for is the guru, the guide. And that's who we need to be. The performers, that's who we need to be, is the person helping other people. In the coaching that I do, it's the venue and it's the audience. I call it the triple win. You win as the sage, the venue wins because it has activity going on and customers coming through the door, and the audience wins because of what it is that you deliver to them. So that triple win is really awesome. It's a great thing to remember, but the resourcefulness ends up being that you help other people accomplish what they want to achieve, which through music is usually a feeling of some kind, or a connection, an emotional connection of some kind. So it's been fascinating watching things change over the last few months as people learn about themselves, and seeing the difference of how people have literally fallen off of my email list. I just haven't heard from them in such a long time, and on Facebook media, because they make themselves the hero. Nobody's interested in that anymore. But as soon as you start helping other people as a performer, as a classical musician, they're the people I notice that are beginning to get attention.
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting. It's an interesting. That's an interesting thought. It's so easy to be the hero or to like have that frame. And it's funny because like I'm just thinking, reflecting on myself. All the stuff I've done the last 15 years or so, it's never been about me, but I've sort of become the main character in the story without not intentionally. Everything I send out is, or like 97% of it at least, is not about me at all. But I guess I'm in there in some capacity.
Well, if you think about Star Wars, Obi-Wan Kenobi isn't the hero. Even Darth Vader isn't the hero. Yoda is the hero. Qui-Gon Yoda was the guide, so to speak. And we can all quote Yoda partly because of the way he speaks. How many quotes from Obi-Wan Kenobi can you can't recall them.
Not off the top of my head, that's for sure.
No.
Yeah.
and it's the same with many of the other characters in that movie, but also in any movie, there's always the guy, the person who turns up and says, "Have you tried this?" Even Batman, we love. I'm going to get his name wrong. I think it's Arthur. Is it Arthur?
The butler. I think it's Arthur. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. We'll go with Arthur.
Can't remember. All right.
Alfred.
Alfred. There you go. That's the character that we find endearing, and that we actually, you can be doing whatever else, and you're really into the movie and all the action, and you love it. When Alfred speaks, you listen, because that's Batman's guide, and it's just little one-liners that push him in a certain direction and make him think about something. The end of the first Batman movie with Christian Bale, when he's rebuilding his house, and Alfred says, "You're going to build it exactly as it was?" I thought it might be a good time to, just reinforce the foundations in the southwest corner, and now he's got his Batman cave. So, so that's, as a musician, as a performer, if you make yourself the hero, you are keeping it to yourself. You are a taker, and you're bringing everyone into you. If you can flip the switch if you can actually flip that approach and that attitude, and actually recognize that the people who are paying they're the people who have actually paid for your time, energy, and effort. They're the ones who are sitting there waiting for something. What is it you're going to give them? So they become the hero in your life. That audience member, that one person that you're performing for in that audience of 1,000 people, what is it you're giving that person? How are you giving it to them? How are you going to make their life better? They become the hero. You become the Alfred or the Yoda. And that's what people will pay for time and time again. They'll come back for that.
Yeah. It makes, you mentioned Taylor Swift earlier. There's somebody in the non-classical music world that I think is particularly great at making the audience the hero. Even though she's such a major celebrity, and even if I think on a different platform, some of the bigger YouTube channels that I follow, how do they build that audience and have that? And how do they engage the community and make the community up front and center? It's an interesting thing. Maybe it's something
Go ahead.
No, maybe it's something to do. I always come back to this when I'm thinking about classical musicians in particular. Maybe it's something about us sitting in these little rooms by ourselves, practicing these little passages for hours on end.
Absolutely. And we have spent 15 to 20 years of our lives being critiqued and learning our craft, perfecting our craft. And one of my big messages is always the difference. There is a massive difference between your craft and your career. They're two separate things. And you use your craft to build a career. You can have a career out of anything. And most of the time, it will be based on your craft. Unfortunately, for a lot of classical musicians, you have to do many other things in addition to your craft. But we've spent so much of our lives being critiqued by teachers and our peers, our competition, by adjudicators, audition panels. Everyone's just picking apart what we do. So we focus on how we can do it better and better and better. Well, there comes a point when you need to maintain your craft and possibly keep growing it a little bit, but now you've actually got to use it to earn a living. And that, again, is something completely different. So nobody has, in certainly until about 5 years ago, nobody told us, showed us, number one, that there is a difference, and number two, how to do it. I figured it out 30 years ago in England, brought it with me to the US, and it's been wonderful for me and my students ever since. But most people don't show us how to do that.
Yeah, it's interesting.
We just don't have that mindset.
Yeah,
and I have to say, there was, you mentioned YouTube stars. This whole isolation thing is just embarrassing because we come across so much stuff. There's a YouTube channel, and I'm not getting paid to plug this, called The Detail Geek. And he details cars. He's up from Saskatchewan, up in Canada, somewhere crazy. And he just details cars in his garage. Is he the hero of his YouTube videos? Absolutely not. He's showing you what he's doing, how he's doing it, the tools that he's using, the products that he's using, where you can get them. He is being a guide, and he is getting 700,000 views watching him wash a car. It's amazing. And I try and think how, these people building houses off grid, millions of subscribers and views on these things. How do they, number one, how do they do it? Well, they're all doing it because they're showing what they're doing. They're showing other people how to do it. They're being the guide. They're not the hero. And then secondly, how can we do that in music without infringing on copyright? Yeah. It's really, really tough.
It is tough, but no, it's interesting to watch people certainly outside of the classical music world, which tends to be not the most progressive of worlds in a lot of ways. And so, so I've also reflected on that quite a bit. And it's interesting. So many people decide not to take a chance and try to build their own thing because of the security of the institution, be it a university or an orchestra, whatever. Well, isn't this an interesting moment right now to think about that? All these things that seem so secure, or even someone who has worked to build maybe a solo career through a company or something and is playing with other orchestras, but they still haven't retained the control of their career personally that they might. So it's a little bit it's interesting. Even when we feel secure, and I I remember thinking about this back around 9/11, and then also during the economic recession. Some of the benefits of being as diversified as I am career-wise and have been, and even with all the physical things go away and I'm trapped in my own home, my work is still in pretty good shape.
Right.
Whereas I look at friends of mine who are, the future is just so uncertain. And I mean, it's uncertain. I think it's just a good lesson. It's uncertain for everybody. So maybe think about how you're spending these days, weeks, months, and years. And if you're connecting with your audience or your potential audience or doing what you really want to do, whether it's really like striking home for you.
Well, I think it depends on what you're committed to, Jason.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the issues that a lot of us, again, don't know that we're supposed to commit to something. We just follow what we're told to do, which is chase those big establishment jobs, which, they've just fired everyone, for crying out loud. Those jobs aren't there right now. And if everyone thinks they're getting their jobs back, you may be in for a little bit of a rude awakening. They may just put it out for bid again. You have no idea. Just chasing that kind of thing and not building your own or taking ownership of your career. I'm going to use the example of Evelyn Glennie. When I was around when she started out as a percussion soloist at the Royal Academy, built an incredible, she was claimed to be the first solo percussionist in the world. Made a career out of being a solo percussionist. And I watched every single move that she did. I used to go around to her house and we used to end up playing in her basement on her percussion instruments and stuff. But oh my goodness, there was not one detail that didn't pass her eyes. She was in control of absolutely everything. And even when she got management, she had to approve all the decisions that she made because she wanted to make sure she had a career, she had an audience, all that kind of stuff, and build it that way. She did not let go of that career at all, not one iota. And yet most people we want to hand it off, partly because we're frightened. We just don't know how to do it. We just don't know where we go. But if it depends what you're committed to. If you're committed to helping people using your craft, you're not going to have much of a problem.
Yeah.
If you're committed to winning an audition, number one, your life is going to suck because you're going to have to go through 100 auditions before you actually win one. And then when you do get it, there is no security. I mean, what next? If you've committed to winning an audition, okay, great, you've won it. Now what? ... It's really quite difficult. It's like, I like using the analogy of eagles. Eagles were not meant to sit around in a nest and just be fed all their lives. They are high flyers. They are designed to soar way above the mountaintops, way above the clouds. And they've trained their eyesight that they can see so far down. But that's what they don't even use much energy in flying. Once they're up there, they just literally soar. They glide. That's what they're designed to do. And when they get hungry, they'll swoop down, pick up their food and take it back and eat it and all that kind of stuff. They weren't designed to hop around on those talons. They weren't designed to sit in the nest forever and wait for food to come to them. Why do we do that? Makes no sense to me.
Yeah, it's interesting. We have so many different kinds of people and temperaments and what they're looking for in their career. And it's interesting. Yeah, it's something I thought a lot about because the older I get and the more people I encounter and work with, the less sure I am of anything. I had this run of students back in the early 2000s, and I was just my darkest point in terms of like career prospects for musicians. And I look back and like every single one of those people has landed an orchestra job in some capacity. And I was like, so far be it from me to advise anybody on anything, but I do think that I think that a lot of people don't. I think that there's rarely a downside. I don't think there's any downside to building your own audience. And I look in like the world of stand-up comedy, something else I'm into, and like, why is it that every stand-up comedian has a podcast and is, like there's just having your own platform and your own audience and building that and developing that and telling their story, which is something I'm trying to do, which my story is intertwined to an extent with that. But that's just that there's power in that. But it's not something that we're typically taught, certainly. And it's no I wouldn't necessarily blame the music schools because if you just look at, again, institutions that are slow to change, higher education and classical music are among the slowest. So.
Right, but it's not their role. That's not their job.
Yeah, good point.
We shouldn't expect them to do that. Universities were never set up to be vocational.
Yeah, good. That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. So, if we go in expecting to get a job once we've graduated because we've got a bachelor's, okay, that did happen 30 years ago. You came out with a bachelor's. You were one of 50 people in an office somewhere who had a degree. You got promoted real quick. Nowadays, with universities so big and large and stuff, all they're doing is they're showing you your craft. That's what they're there for. They're there to further the skills and understanding of specific areas of human interest. That's what higher education does. There's no promise whatsoever of what happens after that. So, and I think building the audience, the way I classify it is you've got three types of audience. You've got your audience, and you want to turn your audience into fans. Mm-hmm. And then you want to turn your fans into followers. Mm-hmm. And once you've got followers, it doesn't matter where you go, there are going to be people promoting your work. And a lot of classical musicians, not many with orchestra jobs, come to me for help, but some do. And the mindset shift is a struggle for them. But the ones who make it, the ones who actually do that mindset shift, their whole lives change completely. They start doing more outside of the orchestra. They stop relying on orchestra management to find them audiences. They now have a purpose for turning up every day instead of doing Bolero for the 57th time, all 17 minutes of just sheer boredom. They actually now have a reason to do it because there's somebody out there that, number one, could become a fan, or number two, even better, can become a follower. Mm-hmm. And if you put a post out there and say you're going to do Bolero at this particular venue on this particular day, that person is going to share that with their circles of influence, and it maybe even invite somebody along. So it's an intentional act. It is what you're committed to. Do you want to change people's lives through this craft, this language of emotions that we call music, or do you just want a job?
And if you manage to align, if you manage to like set your sights on something you're fascinated with, then everything seems to sort of work out. Like I totally relate to that model. I think of like these three concentric circles, and I have realized that I have built that, but I never set out to build that. But I've thought a lot about this over the years, and for me, how that relates, what you're describing with the fans and followers, is I have those people in that sort of outer circle, and maybe they follow the blog on Facebook, or they've listened to an episode or something like that. And then you have that sort of more inner circle. Maybe they're on my email list, or they're a subscriber of the podcast. And then you have the followers or the true fans. Yeah, those are when I open up and I have like a 9-paragraph email from somebody, or they're suggesting 25 guests. And I mean, my life has morphed into being like an Ann Landers of the bass world. Every time I open up my email, every day I have at least a handful, and sometimes a whole lot of emails like that, the really deep, and those are the people like you're describing. If I'm going to play Bolero, they're going to be, hey, there we go.
I still get snail mail, Jason. People still write to me on a daily, or almost daily basis. I get cards and all kinds of stuff from people who just love what it is I share with them and make their lives better somehow. Mm-hmm. Those, they are hardcore followers. They take care of those people. But it's fascinating because I'm not going to undermine myself here, but I guess I am. Nothing really is new. So many people have done all of these bits and pieces before. Like yourself, you just mentioned that you've done all this stuff. You understand the three areas of kind of who you're selling to, basically. But it wasn't defined. It wasn't identified. It wasn't categorized. You came across it yourself. Mm-hmm. Well, my thing is, why on earth do we have to keep duplicating the reinventing the wheel time and time again? The effort, energy, the amount of energy and effort that goes into discovering these things and figuring out these three circles of fans and followers and audiences. Why does everyone have to go through that themselves? Why can't we just learn from what's happened before? And that's one of the big things that I encourage people to do, is to observe, go out and look. This is what I did. This is how I came across the captivating concert system 30 years ago, is because I was watching people. One of my early conducting teachers at Trinity College of Music in London said, if you really want to learn how to be a good conductor, go to rehearsals and concerts. I'm like, well, yeah, everyone says that. He said, yeah, but go and watch what not to do. And that was absolutely fascinating. So from that point, age 17, I've actually become an observer. I watch what people do, and I take the bits that are clearly working for them, see if there's a pattern amongst other people doing the same thing. If there is, I'm on it. And that's basically what I share with other people these days.
Yeah, I've done something on a smaller scale than what you're describing. The conducting, I had a series of jobs as assistant conductor and some secondary school jobs and doing some youth orchestra conducting, and then finally got a head director job. And I learned so much, and not just about conducting orchestra, conducting, that age, 15 to 18-year-olds in orchestra, which is a different thing.
Yes.
for sure. But that made me a better person. It made me a better communicator. I learned a lot about what to do and certainly what not to do watching some people. And I used to record I got into the habit of recording every rehearsal I did and listening to it back in audio on the drive home, which in a way, removing all the visuals and just drilling down into the audio is really interesting because, there's so much the chaos of the rehearsal, at least my rehearsals, and just that whole environment. Something about just removing all that and just listening to what's actually happening sonically. How are they playing? If I stop, why did I stop? Did I address it? Did it get better? Yes or no? And I'll tell you, doing that every day on my long, stupid commute I had, that really started to change the way that I was as a musician, certainly on the podium, but that translated over to all the other things I do creatively.
And let's go full circle on this. What were you doing? You were basically figuring out how you can best help these performers perform better.
Mm-hmm.
You weren't the hero. You may have been their hero. Some of them may have looked at you as a hero, but you were actually being their guide, their sage.
Absolutely. I was, 100%. Yeah. And with those kids, they wouldn't have put up with me trying to be the hero. They would have let me know. Yep.
Yeah. So, we find ways to move forward. And as that stepping up resource that I just mentioned before, that there's something that includes being resourceful, figuring out how to just find a way to do something, to make yourself better, to earn more money, to perform more. A lot of the people who come to me for coaching, performance coaching, career coaching, they don't care about the financial side. They're set. Maybe they married into money, or maybe they are willing to live in the worst part of town. It's not a priority for them. They just want to perform more. Mm-hmm. And you need to find a way. You cannot rely on anyone else, particularly now. As we come out, as we recover, there are so many places out there that need help recovering from this isolation period. And we are absolutely primed and ready, to help those people, and if you can't fix stupid.
Sure. Yeah.
If you're obsessed with what you don't have on what people are not giving you, there's no resolution to that. You can't fix that. And if people are out there and they refuse your help because they just don't know what it is, or you're not explaining it to them, or they have no relationship to what it is that you do, you can find a way. There are ways to shift your messaging and your communication and what it is that you're offering. Where people will take it. Mm-hmm. You can always find a way. And again, that's something that resourcefulness is something that I think is missing in a lot of classical musicians. You know what else is missing while I think of it? Knowing how to celebrate. We don't know how to pat ourselves on the back and say, job well done. Because we've been so used to being critiqued and being criticized and having our lives picked apart, especially now online with social media. If we don't get the 100,000 likes that our last episode did, then we start crying about it. But you know what? If you put any content out whatsoever, that is a celebration. If you shifted your mindset in any way whatsoever, that's worth celebrating. And classical musicians don't know how to do that. They think it's getting drunk, going down the pub or something. I don't know. And that's the experience I had in London. But even if you recognize there are 3 different types of audiences, that is a massive step forward if that's new to you. You know what? Share that with someone. Celebrate it. Say, wow, yes, I get it. That makes sense to me. I've made progress in my life and my career. We don't do that as classical musicians. You don't see it I just don't see it enough. And when we encourage people to celebrate whatever progress they've made in their lives and their careers, it just doesn't happen. It's empty. It's crickets.
Yeah.
And I think that's so sad, Jason. It really is.
Yeah, it's easy to focus on the negative and forget about celebrating the steps in the journey. And it's it's interesting. It's interesting because if you think about how a great realization is those 3 different types of audience, I think, and anybody listening, just think about how you are with anything. You are probably in one of those 3 different categories for all sorts of things in life. I think about that again, going back to YouTube, spending too much time on YouTube these days, but I'm really into cooking. And so I'll find some new show and I was like, oh, that was kind of neat. I'm not going to subscribe, but that was cool. And then they maybe pop up again. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Subscribe. Maybe I'll hit like. And then like, oh wait, now I'm going to watch it all, and now I've moved to that thing. And just it's tough for people to do anything, anybody in any role in life. It's tough to do something new. I think I believe it's particularly tough for people who do something as perfection oriented as classical music, but you just have to realize there's just a learning curve to everything. I mean, even me, like getting into this quarantine, I thought, okay, I'm going to do more YouTube videos. I use Premiere Pro, but I haven't used it in like 6 months. Okay. I boot up Premiere Pro. I can't remember how to do anything. Right. So my first video is terrible. Like the color's wrong. Everything's wrong. But it's like, that's okay. Then the next video is a little better. It's a little better. And I mean, that's just how we are in life. And it's true in music. If you pull out a piece, you're rusty. Or if you're conducting a piece and you haven't looked at the score in 4 or 5 years, it comes back. But it's just finding something you're fascinated with and digging into it and being willing to put yourself out there.
And if it's a big piece of music, there's no way I wouldn't go back 3 months before the concert and look at the score again. I mean, it's just, any Tchaikovsky symphony demands study, an intense amount of study. No matter how many times I've done the Tchaikovsky's 5th Symphony, I know it backwards. That's the first one I did from memory. All those years ago, but there's no way I wouldn't study that score again. But again, we're still talking about the craft. Mm-hmm. Most classical musicians have no idea about their career.
Yeah.
That's because it's new territory for them. They don't know how to celebrate when they make progress. They don't even know what progress is sometimes. I come across that all the time in my coaching program, is that people don't know that they've actually made progress towards something, that when they actually do learn something that's new to them, that is worth celebrating because it's new to them. It's a realization. It'll help them on their path to share their craft with other people. Yeah, we're used to the craft part. We can play this piece. We can restudy this piece. We can work on the technical elements. We can get the fingers moving differently, all that kind of stuff. That's great. That's wonderful. But what's that going to do for you and your life and for the people that you serve? What's that going to do? You can make a YouTube video. There's a wonderful girl out there playing tons and tons of rags. And that's great. She puts them out there. They're pretty popular. And they're fun to listen to. She's learning different repertoire. That's her craft. Mm-hmm. Is she taking care of her audience? What's she going to do once people start going back to concerts again? Well, maybe some of them, if she's performing nearby, will turn up and see her. If I was her, I would be all over those people, engaging them, emailing them, getting them, encouraging them to participate and comment. Barely any comments. I mean, tens of thousands of views and barely any comments. Engage these people so that when we are allowed to meet again, ask your fans, where are you? Do you want me to come and perform some of these rags for you? Oh my goodness. Do you know that the number of, she could do a whole tour just based on that one question. I just don't see it because no one's told her. No one's shown her how to do it.
Yeah, it's interesting thinking about that craft. We spend so much time thinking about the craft and how if we just keep upping our craft, the career just follows.
And it's the same thing in academia. Sorry to interrupt,
No,
but we said the same thing before. We had the number of international competition winners who come for career help. Once their 5 years are up of management, their career absolutely tanks because there's so many new competition winners behind them now. So they don't know what to do either. But with academia, I've literally had people on the phone. I mean, numerous people on the phone say, I'm coming. They talk to their advisor. They said, I've got 3 more months and then I'm going to get my PhD or my DMA. I've been studying this for, it's been a 5-year journey to get from my master's to this point. What do I do next? What's next for my performing career? And the number of people who say, their teacher said, well, just keep practicing, keep turning up, and somebody will actually hear you play and hear how marvelous you are, and they'll book you. I'm like, are you kidding me? When has that? In fact, when has that ever happened? Let alone how often does it happen? But so I say, okay, where was this person when they told you this? When they gave you this advice? Physically, where were they? Oh, it was in their teaching studio. I said, exactly. They don't know how to go out and find a career. That's why they can't advise you on career management, because they've never done it. They don't know what it is. But it's still what people do. We focus on the craft, and there's nothing else to it. There are 1,700 doctorate level classical musicians graduating every year in the USA. For what? 4, maybe 5 jobs a year? That's a lot of disappointment. There are a lot of people out there not following their dream. They think they're going to get this job. Number one, if they do get it, and you need a PhD these days. Well, in fact, as Jason, was it Hanheim? I've forgotten his name. The principal timpanist of the Met, the former principal timpanist of the Met, the scientist, he never went to college.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's his name. Yeah, he's got a wonderful site. I'll make sure to link up to that since we're talking about it too. Yeah,
absolutely incredible. And showing you how to practice and do all the things, everything right, basically, and just proving the outlier case that all this education that most of us have spent a lot of time, energy, and effort on, we're not going to get a return on that investment. You don't need, you don't necessarily need that. You could lose out to someone else. So a lot of people go through that PhD DMA system expecting to get something out of it, that they'll find a job somewhere in some little college in some town. Even if they do, nowadays it's adjunct work. They're going to get 2 classes. Maybe some private students. They are not going to be able to survive on that, but they just can't let go, because that's the craft, is the teaching, the higher education thing. That's their craft. For performers, it's getting out there and performing, usually in orchestras, opera, place like that. Maybe they venture off into a different genre like jazz or whatever else, but it's getting out there, getting the gigs, and they just don't know how to do it. They think networking is going to be the way. They think they're, like we were saying before, what are you committed to? Who's your audience on your website? Who does your website actually communicate to? If you have a look at your own website, not talking to you, Jason, but to people who are listening, look at your website. Who is going to be interested in it? The way it's set up, the content you've got on there, who cares? Literally, who cares about that? Because if it's not the audience are the people who are paying. The audience are the people who are actually paying to put their butts in the seats. Even if you have a third party in the middle, like an orchestra management or recital society or something like that, they're not the ones paying you. They're the people who need support. They can't exist. Their business model doesn't work. That's why they need funding and grants and donations, because they don't have any money. Where are they getting it from? They're getting it from the audience. So your website, is it for the audience or is it for those decision makers? And again, most people don't know, because it's not something that's crossed their mind, and certainly not something that they've been told to think about.
I remember about 5 years ago thinking about what you're talking about, and I had this very standard academic sort of bio page, and my site's gone through a bunch of iterations, and so I don't even remember what's up there now. But I remember just taking it and totally just like deleting the whole thing and writing like a totally different like informal, just like conversing sort of bio page. And I remember showing it to one of my colleagues, and the response was total confusion. Like, you're not listing any of your accomplishments and your past teaching. It was like, and I was like, I don't think people care about that. I don't like, that's not really so I don't know. It's definitely, it's interesting.
Well, there are people who do care.
Yeah,
there are people out there who want to see that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's good to have it in a spot, not front and center.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wait, the people who are interested in that are going to ask to see it. So then you can send them a link. I often have, in fact, most of my websites, they have the main URL and then /backend/ and then something else after that, because there's stuff on the back end that most people just don't need to see.
Right.
And yeah, if you request it, I can send it to you.
Exactly.
What were you going to say? I interrupted you.
No. It's just interesting to. Well, and again, it goes back to what you were saying. Like, who are you communicating with? And at times you're communicating with those decision makers, or however we want to frame it. And then there's where the back end link goes, and you can get all the stuff to populate for the clinic or conference or event. But I think about what you're talking about a lot when I go visit musicians' websites, which I do frequently, especially if I'm going to chat with them or bring them on board for something I'm doing. And yeah, it's very interesting how people represent themselves, how they do or don't communicate with different audiences, how they come across, how little personality frequently comes across in their communications. Not everybody, some people are, but it's definitely interesting thinking about these tools.
We get we get the technical side of things, because again, we're focusing on the craft. So we get the technical stuff coming across, and we don't know who the person is. We don't get the personalities, you say, which is very sad, because the reason that the way you play bolero is different to the way I would play bass in a bolero, because we're just two completely different people.
Mm-hmm.
And people want to see that. They want to see that genuineness, that authenticity. They want to see that personality.
Yeah,
it is fascinating stuff.
It is. I think it's really interesting. I think about. I get this question. Help me, Stephen. Give me a quick 18-second consult. So like, I get the question a lot. Like, what do you do? Give me the quick. So like, I don't know what the heck to say. I don't have a tagline on my website or anything. Back when we were still renting, I learned to never say musician, because that called up all sorts of questions. I would say web design and consulting, but how do you frame what you do, like in 1 to 2 words, like, or in the fewest number of words? And then how should I frame what I do? Help me.
Okay. So the way we do this is, and I do this with my repertoire talks. When I'm speaking from the stage about the repertoire, I go out and I ask a bunch of people, what can you find? What do you like about this piece of music? And they are not me. I make sure they are not musicians. They have no idea what they're talking about. Now I'm relatable to the audience, because it wasn't insider knowledge. This is stuff that somebody outside who might be listening to this would find interesting. So now I can communicate. So what I've done to learn about myself and how to share with people who I am, note, I didn't say what I do, but who I am, is I would say if you're like a networking event, you go to conferences a lot and you meet people, that kind of stuff. A lot of people say, okay, well, what do you do? I very rarely say that anymore. What I say is, how do you inspire the world? Number one, you get silence, because people are just not expecting that. Then they have to think about it, and then they'll tell you something that may or may not be related to their work. Now you've got a discussion point. And as I listen to what people say about how they inspire the world, that gives me the language that I can use to actually relate to them and share with other people how I inspire the world, how I make people's lives better.
I like it.
All right.
I like it.
So next time we talk, Jason, I want to hear.
That's good. Stephen, you would fit in well out here in Silicon Valley and San Francisco. That is that may have been a phrase uttered at some events here.
That's funny.
It's interesting. I've come back these days to just saying I'm a musician, because that's like the simplest way. And what we're doing right here, this is part of my musicianship. And what I'm going to do on the bass later on today, or video editing or whatever, that's just like sort of that. I do all these other things, but that's sort of how I've. That's maybe not a very satisfying answer, but that's sort of like what I've played around with.
Yeah, and musician is such a big fat label these days. Yeah. It can mean almost anything. You know, you can get away with anything you want. I mean, I tell people that I help musicians to inspire the world. Mm-hmm. I help musicians impact the world, or give the best performances that they can in their communities, and help their communities. That's what I do. And to me, that's been my role as a conductor. I am not a conductor as such. It's that I help the musicians who are actually making the noise, by the way, help them share their music with their circles of influence.
Yeah,
and make their lives better.
It's such a natural extension for you, especially being a conductor, because isn't that so much what a conductor is? And that's something that I've thought about. Yeah. Not that I'm at a very different level of conductor expertise than what you are, but like I've thought about that a lot. Like I'm making zero sounds. I'm up here inspiring, guiding, being on the journey, telling these stories. Not my story, hopefully, but it's interesting. So actually, it's very natural to me that you'd be doing the work you're doing, given what a lot of professional musicians like it when a conductor knows what they want, and that's why we study the scores. That's why we go in knowing what is written down on the sheet of music, on that reference material in front of us, and one way of which it could go. But a good conductor will be open to other ways, because as we just said, they're not the ones who are making the noise. Toscanini didn't care a diddly squat about the players. You were an absolute machine. And if your cog got out of sync with that machine, then you were replaced instantly. Mm-hmm. That's why we ended up with unions, because of people like him. So fabulous conductor. We had a lot of good music in him, that's for sure. But it was his music. It wasn't that body's. And one of the most interesting experiences I've ever had, this was not intentional, it just came out this way, that we were playing Benjamin Britten's 4C interludes, and there's the storm scene, really intense stuff, and I just leaned over to the cellos, and I just was really frustrated and flustered, and I said, "Is that really how you want to play that?" And I mean, you could hear the gasp from the whole room. It was just like, whoa, who the heck is this guy talking to us like that? It was a well-known orchestra. And yeah, I've never been back there, but you know what? I've had a lot of players reach out to me and stay in touch and say that had such an impact on them, that they realized that somebody was actually giving them permission to be a musician. To do what they were trained to do, as opposed to just follow instructions. Yeah. So I said, well, good. Why can't you get management to get me back, for crying out loud? Stephen, we just did an hour. Let's do this more often.
Seriously?
This is great. It's a blast chatting with you. We could do this all the time. It's
oh my goodness.
It's a lot of fun.
I'll tell you what. Only if your listeners say. All right. There's no point wasting anyone's time. So if your listeners like these conversations, then yeah, absolutely. Just ask them to let us know.
Sure. Actually, you heard it, listeners. No, it's great. Yeah, I mean, that's what I love about the podcast is I like chatting with people that I find interesting, and people that are on the journey with me are probably, and I love connecting with all sorts of different people. I probably have a pretty high percentage of my podcast guests are not bassists. The majority are, but I think it's fun to have our sort of my niche being the bass. But the dirty little secret of this podcast is we don't talk that much about the bass on this podcast. So and that I think that's okay. So
that makes it human. For crying out loud, we are human beings. We have things in life other than music, by the way. And I just posted this today. The fact that the last 2 weeks, to help me recover from my lack of motivation in the world, I've been inundated through choice with Brahms, Liszt, and Dvorak. I mean, every symphony, sonata, song cycle you can imagine. And I've just been blaring it through my speakers all day, every day. And as well as the Shaft version of his radio edit of Sway.
Nice.
Dance, I know, right? Dance music. I mean, I like Juno Reactor, for crying out loud. So, we're humans.
Yeah.
If you isolate yourselves from the world, then how are you going to make the world a better place with your music? Again, it makes no sense to me.
I hear you. Well, hey, it's great. It's great to chat. So I'll send people to where I've been taking notes. So I'll send obviously your website, Concert University, and the Stepping Up, that resource that you mentioned. And so anything else? Yeah,
that one is concertuniversity.com/stepping-up. There's also stephenpbrown.com, Stephen with a PH. Those are the probably my podcast is Classic Jabber. That's just me and my friends. It's nothing like what you do. It's just me and my friends chatting, musing about music, just jabbering on.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
It's
yeah. For breakfast for the last couple of months, so it's been mostly interviews.
Yeah, it's tough because that's so that's like sort of a special environment that you have, like your breakfast recordings and stuff like that. Obviously, that's a harder thing to do, but it'll be fun to. I'm sure you'll be able to get back to that soon.
Oh, we cannot wait. I've already reached out to the venue and said, when can we come back?
Oh, yeah, I know. I can't wait. It's so funny to think of my last live podcast. It was with Christian Fabian of the Lionel Hampton Big Band. I was in Moscow, Idaho, in last day of February, I think, or something like that. Never in a million years would I have thought that was going to be like my last live chat for goodness knows how long.
Wow.
But so.
Well, one day we'll meet. I'm sure we can do a live thing. But in the meantime, just call whenever you.
All right.
Yep.
Thanks for chatting, Stephen. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Have a good rest of your day. All right. Take care. Bye. Stephen, thank you so much for chatting. And folks, check out the show notes for links to his website, social media, all that kind of good stuff. And I enjoyed hanging out with Stephen. I hope you did too. One of these days, I'll get to Tampa, Florida, and we'll actually be able to do a podcast or just spend some time together in person. Thank you for listening to this. Boy, I am getting sick of sitting at home. And the furthest I've left, the furthest distance I've gone from my place, I think, is a mile, either south to the Ferry Building here in San Francisco or west, like maybe a half a mile to Trader Joe's, where I'm headed after I finish recording this. So life is getting a little bit monotonous on my end, but one thing that makes it not monotonous is connecting with people for the podcast and hearing from people who listen to the podcast. So thank you. If you've reached out in the past, either through social media or email, feedback at contrabassconversations.com, I thank you so much for following along. We have a bunch of new things in store, many of which are announced on the email list. So if you're not on that, you can just head on over to the website and you'll find a form for that. Or I think contrabassconversations.com/email or something like that, or some annoying thing will pop up and ask you for it. So anyway, I appreciate you being on this journey with me, and I really appreciate the team that helps me put these together. They are Michael Cooper, Steve Hinchy, Trevor Jones, Krista Copper, and Mitch Mooring, who is a silver medal winner for tone, his beautiful bass that won that medal at the 2019 International Society of Bassists competition. Mitch is making new basses and doing other cool things. Visit him online at mitchmooring.com. Hey, you ever wonder who's playing that groovy bass line behind these intros and outros? That is Eric Hochberg in Chicago, wonderful bassist and friend. Learn more about him at erichochberg.com. I'm your host, Jason Heath, and we will see you again soon for more life on the low end of the spectrum.